what makes a side win a negotiation? Some of you may vanish now then. That's why. What makes a side win a negotiation? Your ability to identify the commercial issues. How do you identify commercial issues? After some point, so you should be able to read and review the contract. Okay, that's very important. Then you must have some prior knowledge so that you can even hear a term and then you can ask questions without seeing the contract. Level 1 is no update on latest trends. Level 1 is reviewing the contract. Show me the contract, I'll see, okay, this is an issue. Level 2 is somebody says, hey, I have a share purchase agreement, can you help me negotiate with the other side? Okay, is there a non-compete? How long is it? What's the duration? Did you check this? Did you check non-solicit? Did you check ABCD? After a lot of practice, you get there. And this ability is different for different contracts. Okay, you have to develop it for each kind of contract. Third level is you have to negotiate with the other side for better terms. So you have to explain the case objectively. What is objectively? That, okay, so listen, this is a small company, hasn't had a big history. This is a non-litigious sector. People don't want to litigate. Why are you taking an uncapped indemnity? Take a capped indemnity. I would rather run the business if I have to give you an indemnity that is uncapped. I'll run it for 2 years. Then I will grow my valuation 10 times. Then I'll give you a 5 times bigger indemnity. Why does it make sense right now then? Okay, you can have various ways to put it. Okay, this is objective, rational. This was a rational reason that I gave. The second, the next level of this. Okay, so we are talking of 4 levels of negotiation. The fourth level is using your tone, your positioning. You're using leverage. That, listen, if you get this deal, there aren't any other comparable companies in the market. You're getting access to an asset which is worth this much. You miss this, you've missed the opportunity. Let's not lose this over indemnity clause. Okay, you've seen your lawyers have done the diligence. You wanted get 5 law firms to do diligence on this. If you don't find anything, obviously there's nothing, right? So that's the second level. Now this is again logical, but with higher information, higher, more persuasive. Okay. Third, now another level of this is you get into the psychological aspect. Okay, where you're using your voice, your body language, your behavioral cues, and you're saying that, listen, honestly, what do you expect from the deal? And you're using like a warm voice. There are hostage negotiation techniques which are there. Like Chris Voss is a famous author on this. He has done hostage negotiations for FBI, and he has applied his negotiation techniques to mock negotiations in business settings, and he's done these sessions at Harvard also and tried it out. So Harvard has a program on negotiation, and they had leading courses on negotiation, and he said, okay, let me negotiate with the best trainees and the faculty of this negotiation program, and let's see who wins. And he managed to win all of the negotiations, and he realized that the hostage negotiation techniques which he used to negotiate with terrorists holding hostage the US citizens was actually even more powerful than the objective business negotiation techniques. So if you club the two, then you will be really powerful. But you can't use hostage negotiation techniques to a shareholders agreement without knowing the shareholders agreement, right? So yeah, Chris Voss has a book on this called Never Split the Difference. And there's this app called Masterclass where he has a whole series on it. Okay, so there he actually explains, he calls something as a late night DJ voice, and he explains how to use that voice for a negotiation. Okay, so basically make people calmer on the other side. Now, the thing is that if you can do all of that, then you're appealing to people's primitive mind, not their logical mind. And a lot of times using that approach and then going to the logical side is way more impactful. Okay, but the first thing is, if you don't know the deal, you can't use any of this, right? So you need the tools to know the deals. So the second level was to explain the reason. Now the third is leverage owing to your commercial success. So remember I said that, okay, this is the biggest company in this sector. We're bigger 10 times than the rest of our competitors. Mock negotiation. Okay, not talking about any company. Now, if you miss the chance now, the value will double. So do you want to pay double the value 1 year, 2 years down the line? Or do you want to just get 5 more law firms to do the diligence and then figure out what's wrong, take the indemnity on that, and then move on? Okay, that's second. So leverage owing to commercial success. Now this is something lawyers should be able to connect with to help the parties. Okay, if you are negotiating with a, let's say, a Netflix, engaging a producer to make a TV show, and the producer has a prior super hit track record, you can say that, okay, listen, I can go to another one also, but I want to make it with you because you made and sold my first TV show, which was a huge hit. So let's make the next one together. But you will command a higher price because of the prior track record. Non-verbal psychological effects on the other side, this is what I just explained from, Chris Voss talks a lot about it. There is Keith Ferrazzi also, who talks about it a little in his book called Pitch Anything. Okay, and lawyers need to really know this. This one is another one. Ability to expand the deal. You've got to be able to expand the deal. Okay, like there are many examples I'll give you. Steve Jobs with Gorilla Glass. So Gorilla Glass is common on all phones, right? How many of you have read the story of Steve Jobs' negotiation with Gorilla Glass? So their factory, Gorilla Glass manufacturing, was done only for industrial purposes, and the factory was shut when Steve Jobs went to meet the MD of Gorilla Glass. The company was Corning. Okay, Corning was making Gorilla Glasses. Okay, but they had stopped doing that. They were using it for industrial purpose. When he realized that, that when I keep my phone in my pocket, the keys crash the whole screen. Then he realized that, this doesn't work. We need better glass. He went to meet this chap, and he said that, I need all the Gorilla Glass in the world that you can manufacture. Please start your factories again. And that's how Gorilla Glass was born. Now, if you are starting a contract like that, this is not a negotiation. Somebody who was dead is coming alive, right? And you've got the ability to make a reasonable deal. You've got the ability to make a profitable deal also for yourself and the other side. So those deals go smoothly, and you are inventing a deal from nowhere. That power is there. And I don't see any reason why a lawyer cannot help a business visualize this. Okay. His negotiation with Disney on Pixar. Pixar was, the company. So not on Pixar, sorry, his negotiation with Disney. So when he was representing, like they owned Pixar, right? Apple. And so Pixar was the company separately that time. So Pixar had made a couple of toy movies, and they were negotiating a distribution deal with Disney. And they got the distribution deal. Wasn't on very great terms for Pixar's perspective. But luckily, there was no merchandising clause in that. So Pixar could make the merchandise. So Pixar earned more from merchandise. You've seen those Baby Yoda toys, right? Or you've seen the Minion toys. Those are merchandising. Okay, so Pixar earned more from the toys than from the sales of the movie. Okay, and that happens for many movies. Sometimes the merchandise becomes more popular and gets more revenues than the movie business, because the distributors take it all in the movie business sometimes. So you have the toys which are getting you money. Okay, then they deal with Microsoft, where they invited there's a cross licensing agreement of 1997, where Apple was failing to stay alive, and they were also embroiled in litigation with Microsoft. And Steve Jobs did a very neat one. He said that, just give us some 10 or 100, some $1 million. He asked for $10 million or something. And if that hadn't been there, then there had been a problem. So he asked for a small investment from Microsoft. And he said that, we're going to give up our patent claims mutually against each other. And Microsoft should make Word for Apple devices. That's not a problem for us. And that's about it. Okay. And that literally completely, that $10 million, that the purpose of that deal was nothing for Apple other than the $10 million. Okay, that they got, because after that Apple turned around everything, but not because of what they got from the deal. Like Microsoft didn't give them anything else. Okay, basically the legal battle stopped, the legal expenses stopped, but the $10 million or $100 million that they got, I forgot the exact number. Okay, that number, that was the financial lifeline that was needed for the other operations. So when you understand 360 degrees how the business works, then you will know that, okay, this money for this deal will work because there are other benefits you can use.